How's it going, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Mostly Peaceful Podcast on YouTube.com with your favorite show host, Aristile.
And Vaulisel, and what a week it's been. What a week it's been for American politics. Not that
Yep.
we've actually progressed anywhere in any particular direction, which is kind of counter to what's supposed to happen when you're holding an election. You're supposed to have a beginning, a middle, and a conclusion.
All in one night on the date we call election night, which was
Yeah,
this
that's
year,
why it's
November
called
3rd.
that.
Yeah. But obviously that didn't happen, and unfortunately, what I called my most likely outcome happened. They were going to cheat so hard that it would be lit up in neon lights for the American public to see. And now we're in the scarier time of, okay, they've actually done it, now what do we do?
Apparently, cuck and roll over.
That seems to be a lot of conservatives' position. That is not our position.
Yeah, like if things are allowed to stand as they look now, why bother having a republic to begin with?
Yeah, your vote doesn't matter. If this stands as it is right now, there is no point turning up to the voting booth. The whole idea of a democratic election existing in the U.S. is completely dead. Like,
I suppose the real question will be how many people acknowledge that to be the case.
yeah,
Is that what the common American is going to see when they look at this election?
because I've yet to hear anybody tell me how are we going to get conservative policies passed and prevent Democrat crazy progressive policies if this is allowed to go through. Because the only answer that's legitimate to that question is, well, I guess we'll just have to go shoot them. And we don't want to live in a country where that's the answer to that question, because that's not a very happy place.
Yeah, but I mean, when the ballot box doesn't work, is there anything but the ammo box left?
No, not really. I mean, I guess if you prefer martial weapons and you have a sword or a spear somewhere, you could try it. I don't think you'll get very far, though.
At any rate, if you haven't been able to guess by now, we're less than pleased to see how the election went, and it is not because we think that there was any kind of legitimate failing on the part of the Republican campaign, but more because, well,
They cheated.
nothing makes sense. Nothing that has been presented makes sense, and a large proportion of the political establishment, the media establishment, and the common voter seem to be appealing to the idea that we should just stick our heads in the sand and pretend that everything did make sense.
But yeah, that's not the way of things right now. So them acting that way is, but us going along with it is not. So, we have cobbled together a short list of some topics to hit on, and as things come up for vote and come up for lawsuits, we'll delve more into those in the weeks that go on. But for now, we're going to focus this show primarily on giving you an overview of our two eyeballs and what they saw on both election night and the week that followed. Now, the Democrats will say you can't trust them, but I'm telling you, we are giving you firsthand witness testimony. We were there, we were awake, we saw all this stuff happen throughout the week. And that is permissible evidence in a court of law as
Well,
direct
no,
evidence.
us it's hearsay
Well, yes. But
because somebody else is telling it, is reporting it to us. But the fact that there are people who are reporting it means that those people may be willing to go on record. And in fact, there are several people who already have gone on an informal record with the media saying that I was ordered to do X, which was illegal.
yep, and we have Project Veritas affidavits now, which is very formal and will get you jail time if you lie on them. So, there is no doubt in my mind that we have hard evidence of voter fraud going on with those affidavits. I don't think anybody can question it at this point that something screwy was going on. And we're going to give you our impressions of it. So, we'll start off the show by recapping a bit of what we expected to happen. So, I had two scenarios going into this election, and they basically went between do the Democrats cheat or do they just roll this one over and try and take it harder next time. I gave it about a 60-40 split in favor of them cheating, but still hope beyond all hope they wouldn't, because we're going to have this mess. And yeah, they cheated. The not cheating scenario involved a 300 plus electoral vote landslide.
I was about 95% sure that things would go this way, except some of the fine details I was surprised by. Number one, Trump overperformed what I expected him to do in practice. Number two, the Democrats permitted much less election day intimidation in writing than I expected. And the other thing which was outside my expectations was the sheer level of sloppiness involved in their election fraud.
Yeah, this is very close to the tack I thought they would take, but it's still ridiculous to the extent that they used it. Um, what you're going to see is we're basically accusing the Democrats of taking a shotgun approach to cheating and trying every method they could in counties where they needed to and they could probably get away with convincing people to try it. And so we're seeing them go as far as to flagrantly violate judge orders even after the election day. Like these guys don't care. They're just trying everything they can to stick it to Trump. You're going to see everything from statistical anomalies to them literally putting cardboard boxes on the window so people can't look in. So,
of course, they've got a series of excuses for each of these things, none of which sound particularly credible to me, and I don't think that they really sound credible to anybody except people who want to believe nothing is wrong. And a surprising number of people just want to accept whatever explanation is offered to them rather than face the. And I can almost understand that, because the alternative is really facing the reality of the electoral system as it stands at this day to be defective.
yep, because that means CR ammo box comments.
Yeah,
So,
but there's still we aren't at that point yet. The courts have still yet to rule, despite what the media are actively telling you. There is no winner to this election yet.
yeah. The media is allowed to call the election, but it does not matter if the electors don't vote that way.
Yeah, the media calling the election is fundamentally their opinion, and is in fact just them attempting to influence the narrative. That's why they call things in strategic ways at strategic times during election night. They will call particular states in particular directions. That is not them making a statistical judgment about who they think will win. That is them trying to get certain people to leave the polling lines.
Yeah. It is all the biggest, like, long running, or the longest running psyop in history of the U.S. anyway. Of they will just call things strategically and slowly in order to discourage people in a very particular manner. So next, let's see. I guess we can poke at any notable things said by active participants before the count started. So this is fairly short because there's only a few I wanted to highlight, unless you've got any.
No, I don't have any new ones, I don't think.
So, okay. First up is Trump. And the rally near the start of election night, he gets on and he goes, "I better not see any 4 a.m. ballots."
For those who have been paying attention, pretty much every particular of what has been alleged to be electoral cheating that has taken place over the course of the week was called out by Trump in advance. Like, this is the scenario that he described to his supporters over the course of his campaign. There would be a huge amount of support for Donald Trump. There would be massive widespread electoral fraud, and they're going to attempt to steal the election using mail-in ballots that are brought in at the last minute.
Yep.
What
and
happened is exactly what he described.
Which is a big, high energy, never stop fighting pill to everybody that exists right now on the Republican side, and it makes it so that you guys cucking out as hard as you are doesn't make any sense, because he knew about this stuff, which means he probably planned for it. He probably has been prepping for months.
Of the Supreme Court.
Yes, literally the entirety of his appointees to the Supreme Court are all people that helped George Bush beat Al Gore in the contested election in 2000. Like, Trump is a time traveler, folks. I don't know how to tell you this, but if you don't think so, there's a whole lot of evidence starting to support that.
Yeah, he's not playing 4D chess. He's just done it all before.
Yep. So, I cranked you up a little too high, I think. Let's turn it down just a hair, but okay. Yeah. So, the other thing I want to point out before the election was A statement by the Pennsylvania Democrat Attorney General. He boasts on Twitter, if all the votes are added up in Pennsylvania, Trump is going to lose. That's why he's working overtime to subtract as many votes as possible from the process. For the record, he's 0-6 against us in court. We protected voting rights. Now notice the noise. Now ignore the noise and vote.
Yeah, that's not all that they did before the election, is it?
Yeah, no. So, this was clearly rigged in Pennsylvania from the start. They told us as much effectively with this tweet. An attorney general should never call something like this before the votes even happened. It's goes beyond breaking decorum.
Especially not when you've changed the voting rules twice in the lead up to the election.
Yeah. And that's another running theme you'll see throughout this as we talk about it. We probably won't hit on it very hard, but it's something to keep in the back of your mind. The voting rules, both in the lead up to this election and throughout election night even, change. Always to favor the Democrats.
Even if there's, a Supreme Court order in the way.
Yeah. So, those two statements out of the way, we can jump straight into it. Election night. So, election day, nothing really eventful happens during the daytime. People are showing up to poll places and they're voting as normal, and nothing seems out of place. A few people are collecting.
Those Proud Boys who got stabbed by the crazy people in DC.
Yeah. So
that was election day.
Yeah.
So yeah, they didn't keep Antifa completely tamped down.
Yeah. So the Proud Boys got stabbed, but honestly, that probably is a point of wins a few points in their organization socially, as long as they're okay. I didn't look at how bad they were stabbed.
Well, it wasn't just random Proud Boys either. It was like, I think the leader was stabbed.
Yeah, this in the kerfuffle that's going on, a lot of news has gone over my head because I've been focusing on the election mostly. So
I'm not clear on the fine detail either because it's been completely drowned out by the rest of the noise.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You're going to hear a lot of noise with this election, and there's going to be some very important things that get dropped in the middle of it that you just got to keep your eyes open for.
And because the media doesn't actually want you to hear what's going on. They want you to hear a very carefully constructed narrative that they are building, which is why they have gone ahead as though that there is no dispute over the outcome of the election. They are proceeding with calling states, they are proceeding with calling a victor, and they are proceeding with reporting on his cabinet selections.
Yep. You cannot buy into this. This game is not over.
They want you to slip into thinking that it's over.
Yeah, and you cannot let that happen. You need to be out there with us fighting this thing. And I'll give you a hint. I've been on the ground with this one, and this means you may have to get off your butt. So, next, as the night it starts to roll into towards the night, we start getting a few videos of some suspicious things, like the Sharpie thing that hasn't gone anywhere, and unfortunately it has no real way to test yet because Arizona hasn't come up as one of the major cheaters yet. Although I imagine they're on the list, and we'll get to them before December something hits.
Arizona have a lot of experience at cheating in elections.
Yeah, their times are coming, but they're not here for this one. So next we have election night. Now, I watched some of this with friends and family, and watched the rest of it at home. And I made the mistake when I got home of turning on the Daily Wire stream of it. And oh my goodness, to see those people start cucking out. Like, Knowles was the only one that held fast. And even he was getting warbled because literally everybody in the room with him was cucking out.
Yeah, I don't know. This has been my complaint about the Daily Wire in general and Ben Shapiro in particular for a long time, is that they will randomly just start taking the media at their word.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no reason for them to do that when they spend so much of their time decrying the media. Then they just take the media at their word. The media reports something, the media calls something. Oh, well, I guess that must just be so. Like, what in their experience could possibly lead them to believe that always just take the media at their word when they report something?
And the one thing they didn't cuck out on was another quote-unquote conservative news organization and the early call they made for our little Arizona. Even they were like, "Whoa, what?"
Yeah, everybody knew that Arizona would be an unbelievably contentious race. In fact, it has been referred to as a purple state at length repeatedly. It's had highly contentious races in all of their elections since the last election cycle within the state. And generally speaking, it's been viewed as one to watch right down to the wire. Everybody knows it. It's one of the more common knowledge states to have been appointed by the media as new swing states. So calling it early is a major gaffe.
Yeah. Well, it's a gaffe, but not in the way that you're thinking. You, the listener. I think Vol knows where I'm going with this. So, Fox News is the agency in question here. And they demonstrated with this call and their response to people throughout the week after this call, and how they're scrambling to defend it, even though some of their own staff and hosts are like, "What are you thinking? That's stupid." And every single guest has something to say about it when they come on this week, that they're just in the pocket for the Democrats. There should not be any doubt left.
It really does seem that that's the case. Like, I'm not surprised by it. I'm just surprised at how blatant they were with it.
It was
when the likes of MSNBC are being very, very cagey about calling one way or the other because they know that their constituency will absolutely lynch them if they call one wrong for Biden and it goes back to Trump. But Fox, nope, they're just full steam ahead. Let's just act as though we're Democrats and dissuade the Arizona voters from turning out to the polls as early as possible.
Yeah, it was a bad and dumb call, and this was early in the night. Now, polls hadn't all closed by then, by the time they called Arizona. Most of the other states, as because of the way things work, I judge things based on Eastern Standard Time, because that's usually, we're not in daylight savings time anymore by then, and I live on the East Coast. So this happened, from my memory, around 8 p.m. That is 5 p.m. over there in Arizona. Maybe 6 if they're on Mountain Time.
Yeah, so this basically it reads to the common watcher like an active act of sabotage against the Republicans in Arizona.
Yeah, and it was just such a brazen Democrat operative move that it floored even me that they would come out so suddenly. Like,
well, it floored everybody that was watching from both sides of the aisle. Like even people who were totally in the tank for the Democrats were like, "Wait, they're calling it already? We don't know if they're going to win yet."
Yeah, and so that was a clear indicator to me, and when my flag started going up.
And you ain't the only one that's noticed. There's been an awful lot of outcry.
Yeah, so I heard about it through my tangent. I had the Daily Wire on another stream, and I was mostly playing a video game at the time, and was just looking over whenever they started saying something interesting. And yeah, that was when you could see flags popping out of the top of my skull that were bright red as soon as I heard that Fox News called Arizona. And this is when I went into high alert mode and started watching the race meticulously and copy pasting posts, pictures specifically of Fox News's electoral map to my friends on Discord, and would rotate through them. I have a few of them for you, and I would like to pull them up and show them to you, assuming that I can actually get this stuff to zoom correctly. So I have two maps I want to show you to give you some context for what it was like that night, because the media is trying to make you forget this. They're trying to make you forget how the map looked on election night. They're going through and doing an active purge this weekend. I've noticed it on so many sites. The Donald has noticed it. Even the Farms has noticed it. And the Farms has been infected with leftist shills ever since the election. So, let's start with this. I got it for you. Here is the election map circa about 8:30. I don't have exact timestamps on these, but it was earlier in the night. So you have my state highlighted there because that's where my mouse was when I took the picture, when I took the screen cap. But that's what their map looked like early in the night before they called Arizona. About 8 o'clock ish. Now, they had called Arizona later at 11:30. It had been called by then, easily. But for some reason, their website map must have had some base dude in the office that just refused to call it. Because he still left it as light blue because not enough of the precincts had turned in voting. That's the only thing I can think of anyway. I don't have an exact estimate on that or a reason, but it's all speculation. But so here, on this 11:30 map, I want you to take a look at something. There's a bunch of states here that I want you to keep a very close eye on, because all of them are going to be relevant. First is Arizona, like we mentioned before. Then there's Nevada, which somehow by 8:30, despite all its neighboring states except for Arizona being called, doesn't even have a leaning on it. They just weren't reporting votes. Next, we come over here. And can you see my mouse on OBS? So yeah, okay. So yeah, and next we have the Great Lakes state range here. So Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. You will notice Pennsylvania, Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin are all leaning red at this point. Pennsylvania should almost be dark blue from memory of the numbers. Or dark red, sorry. But
yeah, I remember at by the time I finished work, they were leading by 300,000 or something like that, and by later on, they were leading by like 700,000 or something. The Republicans.
yes.
So they had a humongous lead that they had to be eaten away at. I could be wrong on those numbers because I didn't write them down or anything, but I do remember thinking that was an incredibly hefty lead for Pennsylvania, and that it was something like 6 times as much as they had in the previous election.
Yeah. So we're looking at all the. There are 4 red states here in this map, or they're pink states about to go white or light blue. When those are Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, and all 4 of these states are going to be very important throughout the next month. Also, we have North Carolina, which for some reason got held up in all this. And I think it's mostly just Raleigh officials being dumb and trying to stall this out as a backup plan. I think they're not going to be able to succeed with anything there.
North Carolina, Trump's still so far ahead. I don't.
Yeah,
like,
I
even
don't.
now, I'm pretty sure he's miles ahead.
I don't know why they haven't called North Carolina, but they're why they stopped voting in North Carolina. It seems like a lost cause. But we said this about all of these Great Lakes states. So.
Yeah, North Carolina is currently at 98%, allegedly, although most of these contentious states have been at 98% for days now, and Trump still has a 1.4% margin.
Yeah. So, the other one is my own state, Georgia. I want the listeners to understand something. I've lived in Georgia my whole life. I've lived in Gwinnett County my whole life. I'm doxing myself pretty hard here saying that. And I have grown up in this area and seen what the Democrats do over time. When I was born here, up through my entire childhood, this place was the sticks. And you could not find civilization or even a convenience store for 10 miles from my first home. As time's gone on, and civilization, in air quotes, has crept its way out here, I have watched this county become more and more cut as time has gone on. And I still love that old image of where I lived enough in the place I grew up in. And there's still enough of an identity here. I'm going to keep fighting for it. But it is horrible what they've done to Georgia, and especially areas like upper North Gwinnett.
They aren't still, they're just making it less racist.
Yeah. I have seen that argument. So.
What, really?
Yes.
I was being facetious.
You can't be facetious with the Democrats because I guarantee you they've said it. You can think of the most ridiculous statement you could possibly noodle through, and they've said it somewhere. So yes, I have a personal stake in this race. My boots are on the ground. They're going wherever I see an opportunity to go. I am talking with people to try and get a group of people that will go talk to people that have been at these voting locations in Gwinnett, and we plan on doing what we can to get answers out of them as legally and correctly and politely as possible.
I don't have much of a personal stake in this election, other than the fact that I'm a Catholic and Biden has proclaimed himself a devout Catholic, despite the fact that he's under late sententiae excommunication. Like he's not a Catholic in good standing. He's an excommunicate, and yet he is strutting about as though he's a Catholic and quoting "On Eagle's Wings," which is the single most cringy Catholic song for boomers ever.
Yeah, I didn't even associate it with as a Catholic song until you mentioned it last night when you went on a when you went on a rant about it after the show.
It's because it's iconic of sort of the it became a symbol of bad Catholic music, and furthermore a symbol of the deterioration of Catholic tradition and liturgy. And Biden is basically standing at the center of that. He's an icon of what it means to be a cultural Catholic rather than a real Catholic.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, uh, I have a very personal stake. Not only is my state involved in this tomfoolery, but my county. So I'm in a position where I can finally go boots on the ground with this, and we need everybody we can get.
And you're gonna have to, because you got a state runoff.
Yeah, and this is the other thing in Georgia. One of the Senate seats is undecided. If they're allowed to get away with this tomfoolery, we need to continue to fight and stop these people from trying to cheat again. There is no way any of the Democrats can win if the Republican votes are not split between Loeffler and Collins. And Loeffler has won that run between the Republicans. So even though I have reservations about the girl, even though I'm tapping my foot wondering if she'll backstab us, you need to get out there and stop Osloff or whatever Democrat won the primary. And we need to, more importantly, be sure we're there looking for them to cheat anywhere. I am registering as a poll watcher this week as soon as I can for this special runoff election, and I will be there. And I expect every single one of you listening to this show that's in the ballpark of this area to do the same. Because to not do so is to neglect your civic duty at this point. If don't give me no stupid arguments about, oh, but I just want to put food on the table for my kids. Yeah, let me tell you what's going to happen if the Democrats win here. If the Democrats are allowed to cheat, they're going to go balls to the walls with their stupid progressive socialist agenda because nobody is going to be allowed to try and stop them. They're going to receive the endorsement from the powers that be that it's A-okay to cheat like mad. And they can ram through whatever they want, and the means be damned, the ends are worth it.
Yeah, ultimately that will cause the disintegration of the Union into civil war. There's really no alternative at that point. If the political class is allowed to levy their will over the public in an environment where everybody has just accepted that the electoral process does not function, sooner or later they're going to implement something that triggers a civil war. And then it won't matter how much you want to put food on your table or keep your kids safe, because the war will come to where you are.
And you Christians out there, I'm coming for you. You guys are the biggest cucks on the planet right now. Those of you in Georgia right now that are sitting around going, well, I mean, God says we're supposed to respect the leaders of every country. Biden was not elected fairly. There's clear cheating going on. Our Constitution has a procedure for choosing the next leader, and Biden usurped that. He ran that over with a steamroller. He did not give a flying fuck. And you're going to tell me that he's the ordained leader of our country? Fuck you. No, you get your ass on the ground with me and do something to stop this garbage. Unless you really want your kids to go into the gulags. So stop feeding me the usual bullshit lines. I don't care what you do, but stop acting like a cuck. Okay, so...
in case you hadn't guessed, Ari is kind of mad.
Just a bit. So, moving on. We have the election night being suddenly paused.
Yeah, I remember hearing this start to get announced on the radio, and I'm like, wait, what? You don't just stop counting when the election is not over yet?
Yeah.
And no, I would like to note that Florida didn't need to stop counting. California didn't need to stop counting.
Yeah, and it did not matter what time zone it was. Everybody's just too tired and we gotta go to bed. I guess they didn't give a reason in most of the states. We need to stop counting.
Because
Okay.
working is hard.
I mean, I could believe that as their legitimate reason. Democrats are lazy. But yeah. So the election stops. Just put on hold. We're not electing somebody tonight. And we saw the strategy unfold throughout the night. During this stopped period, all the methods of stuff happening throughout the night will 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 be done in sequence. First, we'll have dropped off ballots, and then we'll have sudden boosts for Biden in different states. And there'll be glitches that move Trump votes to Biden, and there will be percentage of votes counted, and all the counties change, and all the states change that are still in that haven't been called yet or officially submitted their results to the federal government. Like they clearly were using the first few hours of election night to judge how much they needed to cheat and where they thought they could get away with it.
Because everywhere where there was no reasonably able to be overcome margin, everything seemed to just proceed as normal without very much disturbance. You know, they did their counting, they got the results out, but those states which were contentious, which were battlegrounds, where the ones where Trump was leading by often a significant margin, but it really didn't seem like that was normal for that state because they're supposed to be blue. Yeah,
yeah,
all of those suddenly started to experience statistical anomalies.
yeah, and this is where we get to there is fuckery afoot. The swear light is on for this show. I'm just gonna go ahead and pull that
No,
card.
really?
Like, so we're gonna have to label this one. Make sure it doesn't get out on any iTunes feeds or something silly. But yeah. So the first things that people noticed were not actually that the voting was stopped, because it's not that uncommon in the U.S. for major cities to pause their voting to cheat at a local level.
But half a dozen contentious states at once?
Yeah, it never happens simultaneously, and it never happens on the scale we saw it happen at. But people were saying, how come Fulton County is saying it has 98% reported and just won't count the last 2%? And I was like, they do this all the time. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that out of the ordinary when it first happened. And then everybody else started to stop. So this was the first clear sign something was wrong. And I have yet to hear a coherent argument for why they stopped counting. Nope, nobody can give me one.
They were tired. Well, from what I heard in some regions, and unfortunately I don't have anything to cite in support of this, but what I heard was that there were regions where the media were told that counting was stopped, and the GOP poll watchers were told that the counting has stopped, and
But
they all went home,
but
and the Democrat poll watchers and counters all stayed
I
and kept
recall
counting.
I recall reading these statements as well and would put them well within the realm of possibility, but I do not have an example on hand. It's not one I prepped before the show. So yeah.
That's something that I heard. So when I got up in the morning, and for me it would have been on the 5th. So it would no, it would have been when I got up in the morning on the 5th, which would have been the 4th, which would have been late on your 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that I did is I checked my phone, and my phone was freaking blowing up because I had slept through the part where they had all stopped. They all stopped counting, and my phone was completely clogged with new social media posts, all ranting about it stopping. And so I just switched on my computer, and I had seen a thing from Crowder, so I brought Crowder's stream up on the screen, and they were all in dressing gowns and whatnot because they dredged themselves out of bed to do an extra show. And his half Asian lawyer staggers onto the set, and he's like, I just got contacted by some attorneys who happen to work in, I think this one, I can't remember which state this was. Was it Pennsylvania or was it Michigan? It was one of them anyway. You'll know which situation I'm talking about once I describe it. And they were outside one of the polling places, and they recorded video footage of trucks rolling up to the poll counting place and unloading, like, I don't know what you call them in America, but chili bins, we call them here.
Oh
Cooler
yeah,
bins,
yeah, little wooden
and
things. Yeah,
wagons and things that were all unmarked, and they were wheeling them into the ballot counting station, and they weren't checked or traced or anything like that. They were just wheeled in there, and there's no reason for them to be bringing in huge amounts of food or changes of clothes and suitcases and things, because the counting shifts are only 4 to 6 hours long. So yeah, and that was the first thing that I saw that constituted hard evidence, like concrete evidence, that something was going very, very off plan as far as this election was concerned.
I think I was spurging out at you too about that all night while you were asleep. I might have waited until
I
you
was,
got
I
up.
was I was asleep, so I wouldn't have noticed. I had my phone on silent because I knew that there was no way I was going to get any rest if I left any alerts on.
Yeah, I think I left you like 50 away messages from just what the frack is going on, people.
Yeah, so I saw that one roll in live, and that was when I knew that this was serious business. That the first thing I saw when I got up in the morning was live reports rolling in of, we have video evidence of what appears to be cheating, because the appearance of these containers, these unmarked containers being wheeled into the ballot counting place, was immediately followed by a suspicious bump in votes.
Yeah, and all those votes suspiciously for Joe Biden. Presumably, I'm taking the opinion that they just didn't have time to fill out the entire ticket because it's quite a big ticket, and there's state issues to vote on as well. So you just ain't got time for that. And their priority is to get the executive branch to undo executive orders.
Yeah, well, that, and also it seems to just be part of Democrat psychology to treat the president like the king.
Yeah.
As anybody who would have watched Club Yachar talking at the Amy Coney Barrett hearings, where she talks about how she wishes she was the queen so she could just decree that people have to do things and have them obey.
Yeah, and this lady's now trying very, very hard to cheat her way into the presidency, which you cucks are not helping.
Although, ironically, Klobuchar is one of the people who actually called foul early on certain aspects of the way things were being carried out. I
Mm,
can't remember exactly which she was involved in, but she actually was working with Ted Cruz on calling out some particular thing. But this was well in advance of the election. It was some malfeasance in the way the rules are being set up or something.
yeah. Oh, Klobuchar.
I,
I thought you said Kamala for a second. I'm like, oh,
no,
what?
no, 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 not her. I'm pretty sure that she doesn't have the brains to do anything like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
She's
I was
even
not.
thicker than Klobuchar is.
I wondered why that wasn't processing. Okay, I just heard. I'm so used to hearing Camel Hair's name. That's just what went through my brain, I guess. So yeah, the votes started rolling in, and then we start seeing the percentage counted rollbacks, and these have persisted throughout the entire week as it's gone on. But as the
I'm pretty sure that most of these states have been on 98% for days now.
But we had like Nevada went back to 86% after they said they counted a whole bunch. And that was, I think, mostly because the Trump team caught them on something obvious early. I forget what it was, but they immediately rolled back their percentage counted. But they were still stopped. They're not counting or announcing any results. So they're still frozen because they're still scrambling for a way to cheat. And yeah, this is when Twitter went out of control. Now, Twitter always goes out of control when anything that could hurt the Democrats happens. But they were already labeling Trump's tweets and a whole bunch of other politicians' tweets as possible election, bad election reporting.
Yeah, I think it was something like 50% of Donald Trump's tweets during the course of election day were censored by Twitter.
Yeah. After the 4 a.m. ballot drop, they started labeling everybody that was even remotely conservative as having, this has not been verified. What did they exactly say? This claim about election fraud is disputed. And any tweet you see about the election right now, if you click on an embedded tweet link, even if it's embedded, we'll have that little red text warning at the bottom. This is also when the purge began again. We had another purge of conservative personalities, mid and low tier ones again, because they just keep finding more of them. I guess I'm sure we're on that chopping block eventually. But
Yeah, I saw certain particular individuals on Twitter who were actively categorizing evidence of voter fraud as it showed up and creating lengthy threads and timelines of it on Twitter, and they were just summarily banned
yep,
without explanation.
yep. Now, thankfully, we have a lot of stuff archived. Thankfully, we have the autists on the farms that we're archiving this, although you got to dig through that cesspool of a thread. So it's still out there, but you got to go digging. So yeah, and then we had this will come up later, but throughout the week we had voting software quote unquote glitches.
Glitches for sure, but they seem to reliably go one particular direction.
Correct. They always favor Biden, like every glitch out there favors Democrat. If something political is blamed on a glitch, it's because it favored the Democrats and they got caught. They were doing something. That is what glitch means in the terminology we use these days. If they cannot, because if it's ever a legitimate problem, you'll notice these companies will go out of their way usually to explain it in such detail that only somebody with an IT degree can understand it, to at least cover their butts if it's a legitimate problem. But if it just was them getting caught trying to hurt Republicans, it's just a glitch. Generic.
Yeah, a glitch is basically viewed as some sort of uncontrollable act of God. But I did see the word glitch used repeatedly to describe acts of incompetence or malfeasance.
Yeah. So I think we're about done with the election night stuff that happened on the night.
But the burst pipe happened on the night as well.
It supposedly did, but we didn't hear about it until lunch break. I saw the article as it popped up on the
Oh no,
at work the
I
next
heard
day.
about it. I heard about it very early on. It was they were the first one to. They didn't say we were going to stop counting, but they were, I think, the first one to say, "Oh, we're going to finish counting late because of this burst pipe," and it was quite early on in the night.
Yeah, it's clear what Georgia was. Georgia was a fallback plan if they needed them, because they just too many Trump voters turned out. And I think that's the real monkey wrench in this whole cheating apparatus that really made them have to go balls to the walls and do this and be so blatant about it. Was so
Despite the cheating engine being in place, they still did expect that they were going to get a blue landslide.
yeah, they still thought they were at least going to do well enough that they only would have to cheat at the local level. They didn't think they would have to take multiple counties in several states and cheat with them. This was clearly not on the game plan. But that you Trump supporters, those of you that actually got out and voted, even though the data from this election is useless, like completely useless, it cannot be used. It's too contaminated. It's not trusted. It has been proven at this point that there is some kind of tomfuckery going on with it. But because you showed up and you did something and you got off your butt and you went to that voting booth and put a vote in for Trump, the sheer number of you doing so made it so this cheating was lit up like a neon sign. So your vote mattered. Even if it does not wind up winning your particular state because we can't catch them there, or because it doesn't win your county because we couldn't get them in your county and unfortunately your county went blue, you still helped. You still did something with that vote. By getting up and getting off your butt and supporting the president, we can see it ever clearer than we could if you didn't, that there was serious tomfuckery going on. So stop with the doomer talk about how your vote didn't matter. I've seen a lot of people that do believe in the fraud playing that doomer pill card, and that just is objectively not true. So, next. The pipe burst in Fulton County. Fulton County, for those that don't know, is where the body of Atlanta is in Georgia. It's where the majority of the city itself resides, between them and DeKalb. I don't remember off the top of my head which county it leans more more city perimeter landmass into, but it's a pretty big county, and it's an Atlanta county. So they apparently had a pipe burst down the road at a different location, and this is why they had to stop counting the votes. Now, there is no evidence of this burst pipe. I have not seen any flooding on the streets, and I have been down to Atlanta several times this week. And I have not seen any construction crews out to look at a burst pipe, and I have not received a phone call for we need a replacement pump because something exploded. Because I would be the one to go sell that to them. So, I could tell you, as somebody that would be probably there addressing this garbage, since it's in my field, that this didn't happen. This was a lie.
They also pointed out at the time that, oh, well, this is going to cause a great delay in our reporting of results, but don't worry, none of the ballots have been affected at all.
Yeah.
So, if none of the ballots were affected at all, why are the ballots being delayed?
Yeah. And again, nobody can give me a coherent answer. The answer is because they were doing something sketchy, and they don't want you to pay too much attention to it. Good Lord. So that's that narrative shot down. And then, yeah. So, we got a bunch of stuff going on, but I've been leading for a bit. Do you have anything specific you want to touch on?
Well, I was going to just let you lead because I don't have a very good sense of the timeline because most of what goes on happens while I'm asleep.
Okay.
So when I wake up, then I see all the news at once. So I don't categorize it very effectively.
Okay. So we'll do a few of these specific examples here. I'll open them up and drop them into my other window so that you guys can look on with us. Okay, so let's talk about what happened in Michigan and Wisconsin. These are two very important states. I'm saving Pennsylvania for last. I know Pennsylvania is important, folks, but we might go off on a tear there. So I want to cover these states first, because while this cheating is huge, it's very simple, relatively speaking, because it's just them inflating the vote count. Now,
the stock excuse for all of this is that, oh, there's mail-in voting came late, so we counted it late and then we added it in.
Okay, that's not allowed. That's illegal. Period. So you're telling us you broke the law?
Yeah, but I mean, this is not about the specifics to them. This is about creating a haze of information that pushes a sort of a general feeling level narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I understand that. So this is the evidence of the 130,000 vote dump truck in Michigan that we were alluding to earlier. On my screen right here, you can see Trump has 2,200,902 votes in Michigan. Biden has 1,992,000, about 2 million. We'll round up. We'll go in Joe Biden's favor. So we'll round that up and say he has 2 million votes. So he's 200,000 behind Trump. All of a sudden, Joe Biden's votes shoot up to 2,130,000. He's now only 70,000 votes behind Trump. And that was just from that dump. And then the glitches happened. And steadily that number creeps up. And if you would like to visualize this on a graph, Michigan's on the left over here. We'll get to Wisconsin in just a second. Number of votes counted over time. Starting with ballpark between 8 and 9 o'clock. I don't know what time zone these are in at the bottom. Eastern time. And we see the vote count for Trump and Biden. And Trump comes out pretty quick and gets a steady lead. Gap closes for a little bit around 9:30. And then it keeps going up. We hit midnight. Trump has a very solid lead. Keeps going up. Lead gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And oh, would you look at that? Right at 6:02. Shoot straight up.
That launched 1,000 memes.
Yep. And this is an older version of it. This is while the stuff was still ongoing. You can see the cutoff point. There are more modern versions and that have gone out the week that show this shoot up is even more ridiculous. So, yeah, all of a sudden, no votes for Trump. If we go back to our electoral vote count thing here, I don't remember which website this was cropped from, but just none of those votes were for Trump. His number is exactly the same. How about that?
Yeah,
130,000
so
people instantly voted all at once after the polls had closed, all for Biden.
these dumps, the when I said that I was surprised at the level of sloppiness in the cheating, these are what I was mainly referring to, because these statistical hiccups, they
Impossibilities.
scream fraud.
Yeah.
They scream fraud. So, what have you got? You've got a sudden spike in vote count, ballot count, happening very late at night, hours after the polls have closed, hours after all votes for counting are supposed to have been delivered to ballot counting centers, and they all go to Trump. Statistically, the breakdown of
You
the
mean Biden?
ratios of these vote dumps are impossible. They just don't happen. The reason why you can assert something like this is because if you look at the bluest of the blue cities, the bluest stronghold counties, bluest precincts in those counties, all over the normal states, the states that didn't experience any mystery vote dumps, you will not find these sorts of ratios. The ratios that you experience when analyzing these sudden vote dumps are all quite exceptional. The more conservative ones are at like 97.3 in favor of Biden.
Yep.
Some of them are simply 100%.
Yeah. Like this one. I mean, Joe Jorgensen didn't even get any votes in this vote dump.
And anybody who has actually looked at election statistics knows that that just doesn't happen. There are always some grumpy people who are just going to vote protest votes. So I don't like I don't like the cut of this guy's jib. I'm just going to fill in somebody else's box on this ballot paper.
Yep. It's
That
just,
that statistically you cannot have a situation occur where there's 100% of the vote, and you certainly cannot expect to see a dump of votes which is way out of whack with the bluest places in the country and all of the non contested states, because
even
there are plenty of blue states to compare with that were not contested. You compare their mail-in ballots with these ones, and the ratios are just way off. They don't resemble even slightly what you would expect at all.
this.
It's nonsense. And if you drill down even further still and look about the composition of these vote dumps, if you're looking at urban vote dumps and the demographics that you would expect to see there, despite Trump picking up points in the demographic groups everywhere else in the country that are concerned in those urban areas, well, I mean, you're still going to see Biden outperforming, dramatically outperforming, even though that doesn't really fit with the data at all.
Yeah. And
And the more you look at these, the more inconsistencies you find.
yeah. So in in this scenario here, this is not a perfect scenario I'm going to give you because the county that these were found in, I do not believe is 50-50. But to make it more balanced, let's assume that only Biden and Trump are on the ticket. Let's assume it's a straight ballot with just Biden and Trump. To give you guys a visual image of this, flip a coin 130,000 times. You're telling me it didn't come up tails once.
Yeah, and that is a popular analogy that has been used by various statisticians to try and explain in layman's terms what we're going on here. They usually use a simple number like flip a coin 100 times. If you get 100 heads, then that's how likely you're expecting it to be. I mean, if you give very generous ratios to Biden, which doesn't mean you could, because a lot of these urban cities, they lean pretty heavily blue, and mail-in ballots also this time lean pretty heavily blue. I mean, you can expect to see 60-40, 70-30 in Biden's favor.
So,
That's not strange, but I I don't see 97-3. I don't see 100-0. You can't find those anywhere in the country in any selection of mail ballots.
yeah, now that I've processed this a little bit for more than 3 seconds, a better example would be roll a six sided dice 130,000 times. and tell me you never got a 6.
Yeah, it's not, it's just not feasible. And when you lay it out, people understand that. But that's not what the media are all about, though, is it? They're just pushing that general haze, that feeling like, oh well, I mean, it's not unreasonable to suppose that there would be a skew in the way that the mail-in ballots went, and that type of thinking is it's very sounds very plausible if you're only going to look at it at a surface level, which is the deepest that most people are going to invest themselves in considering it. Because it's not their job to think about these kind of things. It's not their job to think about statistics. They should be able to trust the media. Except not. Except we know by now. We know by now that the media are not even remotely trustworthy. So there are a large number of statistical tests of varying levels of confidence that people are applying to these that are being used to examine the distribution of votes, and particularly in terms, the most popular one that's going around at the moment, and that I have heard rumors are starting to be censored by Twitter,
Oh, I
is,
saw. I don't have it linked in our link dump, but the Wikipedia page has been completely edited.
yeah, I'm not really surprised, is the first and second digit Benford's law analyses. And these are analyses that are frequency based, which are used to analyze the distribution of randomized sort of collections of data. So if you generate a series of data, there should be certain proportions of first digits in terms of numbering. And usually it's for things like transactions and that, but in this case we can use it for voting, where there should be a particular distribution of leading digits ranging in a smooth curve from a leading digit of 1 through to 9. And if you examine in terms of any of the candidates that you would choose to look at, except for the Biden Harris ticket, or you choose to examine it in states which had normal voting patterns, you will find that they obey these laws, they obey these curves. You can approximately model the distribution of leading digits on ballot numbers in the non contested states and for non Biden Harris ticket. It all fits with the law, except you see very strange and unnatural distributions when you examine Biden Harris ticket in votes in the contested states, and then
So
you see that the numbering of the ballots is not natural.
I dug up a picture that I just grabbed off the Donald to read through later that has the example of this in one of the states. I don't remember which off the top of my head state this is talking about, but you can see here on the left they show an example of this law in statistics. In effect, Trump's follow a fairly predictable curve, about one standard deviation off from the curve itself, if that. You look at Biden's, and it looks like a spaghetti noodle.
Yeah, that particular image, has I've seen people saying that it's beginning to attract blocking from Twitter.
Yeah, because this is actual evidence that has been used in court before as proof by prosecutors that somebody has committed some type of fraud.
Yeah, and if you analyze the Supreme Court case between Carter and Ford in their contentious election, specifically it is admitted and was used there that statistical measures are considered evidence.
Yep.
You still need to show malfeasance on the part of one particular party. However, a statistical analysis can be used as evidence that malfeasance has taken place.
Yeah, and it is proving malfeasance in a case with just statistical analysis is not going to help, but it can help set the framing of the case and allow you to present other evidence easier. And you can use it to refer back to how other data you will present matches it that you can use to prove malfeasance. So that's how a proof like this can be useful. But Twitter is trying to make the world forget it exists.
Other interesting things that you see with these mystery ballots, is that, like we mentioned earlier, they vote only at the top of the ticket. No down ballot voting takes place whatsoever in large chunks of votes.
There are a few of the smaller counties that have suspected cheating that do fill out the whole ballot, but they didn't cheat nearly as much as the cities did. And the cities' chunks of votes, I don't know every city did it this way, but it seems like most of the major cities all
Well,
just
I
voted
think
for
that
Joe Biden.
what you would expect is something that's proportional to the required ballot production, because you do have to fill these things in by hand,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes time. If you need to fabricate a large number of ballots very quickly, you're going to have to economize as much as possible.
Yeah, and I guarantee you the strategy a Democrat would use, any sane person would use, if you're going to cheat in this way, you're going to want to keep the team as small as possible to limit potential leaking of your plan, potential whistleblowing, people getting cold feet, etc.
Well, plus you've already thrown out a whole bunch of people citing COVID as the excuse. You can't then bring in more.
Yeah. So there's a whole lot of reasons for them to keep the team small and not have the manpower to go through and just fill out the whole ballot.
Just to throw a few numbers at this, the usual expected rate of top of ballot voting only with no additional down ballot voting is 3%. So in a normal election, about 3% of ballots will only have a vote in the presidential slot. And this year, it's in excess of 18% of ballots.
Yeah. And I would wager to guess over three-quarters of them can be safely thrown out.
Note that the even if you take into account their supposed increase in voter turnout in these states, that increase is only 26%. So
Yeah.
the rate of top of ballot voting only is like within the same order of magnitude of of the total turnout increase.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense. Those two numbers, they don't mesh together. They're too close to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's only if you credit them with the large increase in voter turnout.
Which no sane person is going to, and segues quite well into our next little bit. There are a whole lot of counties that have more people than is registered in them voting. 300 and
Oh,
something to be exact.
well, I mean, you say they have more people voting than are there, but I mean, are you taking into account that ever marginalized and oppressed non-living demographic?
Well, yes, you see, Biden's rallies actually had a huge turnout. We just couldn't see them because they're
Yeah,
all
we
ghosts.
made fun of him. We made fun of him. Oh, well, you can't get 10 people to turn up to your rallies. There's no enthusiasm. Nobody cares to vote for you. Oh, why? How with so little enthusiasm, nobody wanted to show up to your rallies, and you've managed to attract so many votes. Oh, but they were all there, weren't they? They were there in spirit,
They,
literally.
they were just a bunch of ghosts. Unfortunately for Biden, that also means that his crowd was booing him nonstop, but there you go. So, that one was a stretch. I feel a little dirty after that one. Okay.
You should.
Okay. So, I will pull up the cited birth certificate citation that we have in our aggregation post here and post that for y'all to see. New data analysis finds 353 counties with 1.8 million more registered voters than eligible citizens in as an aggregate amongst all those counties.
Now
Now,
that headline is from October.
yeah, and that the numbers now are even worse than that. So that's where we started with, and I think we got a chart somewhere on this thread aggregator you put together. Let's see. I think we got one somewhere. Where? Oh, here we are. So this, you mentioned this is an older one, but it has since been corrected slightly, but it's still showing a 27% over turnout rate or something crazy like that.
Yeah, so their increase in turnout in that graph, which is now considered defunct because they used some really screwy calculation methods to get it to work out. Their turnout reported was 89.25% in 2020. It's actually been amended now to be 84%. Unfortunately, for those who would consider that to be a silver bullet to that argument, 84% is still massively above expectations.
Yep,
Like
and
dramatically above expectations. New Zealand considers itself lucky if they can hit 70% turnout ever in an election. 84% is completely unheard of.
Yeah. And just, I want to point out that the amount of votes in this election would put Biden as having more voters turn out than Obama. And Obama rallied the Democrat base bigger than any president ever.
Yeah, Joe Biden sat in his basement and did nothing, while Obama acted as though he was the second coming.
Yeah. And while this is actual circumstantial evidence, it is still very strong circumstantial evidence. Like,
Well,
Biden didn't
it
do
is the sort of
jack.
thing that you would reasonably presume that there's no good reason for someone to generate more enthusiasm by doing nothing and sitting in your basement than if they, were an expert campaigner. You got to think, they got to remember with Obama is he may have been a useless individual, but he did spend his entire career as an agitator and community organizer. Like rabble rousing was his shtick. It was the thing that he did, was to wind people up.
Yeah, and he was very good at that. He was an eloquent individual insofar as he could speak to what people wanted to hear. And that got them excited and made them turn out. Now, you're telling me that Biden, in some voting, even in this corrected chart I put up on the screen, got turnout in these kind of numbers, 92%. Uh huh. I mean, these are districts, not counties here, but the point stands. You're telling me you got 92% of some areas turnout for Biden? What are you smoking? And get me some, because it must be really good stuff.
Well, it's certainly powerful, but I mean, it may turn you into a Biden voter if it's that powerful.
Yeah, like that's the only way you can live in the fantasy world these people are cooked up. This is so implausible on just a common sense level that I don't know how anybody doesn't look at this and laugh in the Democrats' face.
Well, I mean, people are seeing what they want to see, and what they are wanting to see is merely that. Oh well, we've got this. This is done now. Biden's been elected. Let's just not worry about it anymore. We'll just get on with our day, etc., etc. So, where are we getting all these ballots from? How are they coming to exist? Well, the excuse that's always given is mail. The mass mail ballots. Something that Trump was denouncing from the start because he said, surprise, surprise, that it would be a major vector for election fraud. And as it turns out, yes, they were.
Yeah,
And Project Veritas, the ever debunked, but for some reason nobody can ever supply evidence of their having been debunked, has been on the warpath recruiting whistleblowers over this.
they Project Veritas. I want to give a short tangent to give a shout out to Project Veritas in general. These guys are James O'Keefe and his team are the last journalists in America. Like the last ones. There are no others that do what James O'Keefe can do. This used to be what we thought every journalist was. And he is the last one that still carries that old journalist hat of I see a scoop, I'm going to get it, and I'm going to tell the world, and I don't care who gets mad at me for it.
Yeah, and I mean, people do get mad at him, but somehow he always seems to win his court cases.
Yeah.
It's almost as though he's actually telling the truth and has video evidence to back it up.
Yep. And we have him not just getting whistleblowers, we have him getting people with signed affidavits. Now, and that's different because the way the media has, after the Eric word you can't say, and word that I can't pronounce for his last name anyway, the Caramel Man, after the debacle with, you can't mention the whistleblower's name if you're a part of the public, that's blatantly untrue, by the way. After that debacle, the word whistleblower just means anybody that calls something out at a high level. That's how the populace interprets that term to mean. It used to mean you were willing to testify. It doesn't mean that anymore.
Yeah, unfortunately, but I mean, we got to take what we can get in this surveillance culture we currently live in.
I know, and but we do have people willing to testify. When we say whistleblower, we mean in the old school they signed an affidavit and will show up in court if asked.
So the core malfeasance that we're dealing with in this case is something that I believe to be a federal crime, which is to backdate ballots that have been received after election day to read as though they were received on election day.
So,
My understanding of the law is that it is flatly illegal to place a postage stamp on a piece of mail for a date other than the date on which it is being stamped.
yes, and this is a federal law where we actually have the reasoning written out for it because it's a very old law. Um, the reason the law is written like this and its justification still hold true today. It is written in this way because the mail and postmarks on dates can very easily be used as evidence for prosecutors during criminal investigations. If a post date is allowed to be altered, then that evidence now cannot be used. So they made it a crime to alter it to keep that stuff consistent, so that if the police or the investigative higher ups in the federal government ever need to date something, they have a accurate record where there is a penalty if people get caught editing the date on the ballots, but on the mail in general. So this applied not necessarily to elections at the time, but to any mail, because if it became relevant in any kind of anything that was criminal or needed investigation by the higher ups, they could have an accurate date. So it was against the law to do so. And that is, I just happen to know this as a fun fact of trivia that I read in a book one time.
I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard that you can actually use a postmark as a ghetto copyright.
Yeah, you can kind of. I know the law you're talking about.
If you can use a postmark to prove that you had this idea or product first, and then you've got an official federal date stamped on it, then you can justify that you were the originator of it in certain circumstances.
Yeah, if you had an idea and were circulating it through the U.S. Postal Service and had applied for a patent, and somebody else applied for a patent around the same time, the U.S. mail can be used to say, "Look, I was sending my idea around first, therefore it's actually my idea." That's the law you're thinking of.
This is something that I heard.
Well, it's not so much a law as much as it's precedent in the courts and can be admissible as evidence for awarding the patent in contested patent cases. But yes, that is kind of a thing. So this means that. So let's back up a minute. There's a bunch of ballots that are being mailed out, and they need their vote dates changed to begin with. So this we just mentioned those votes shouldn't be counted. Period, because that's illegal. You can't vote. You cannot vote after the date. It's not possible. The U.S. Postal Service also has several security features on their mail nowadays to ensure that yes, it was properly stamped by the U.S. Postal Service, and yes, it was a proper piece of U.S. equipment, postal service equipment that stamped it and processed the mail. And the ballots themselves have watermarks on them, which they had to concede because in several of these states, a bunch of Republican legislatures at least got them to do that. So we can't have people just printing this stuff off the internet. It has to be a real ballot that you send in. And so what they want to do is they want to postmark these things as coming before the end of the election because they want them to A, count, and B, they want to shuffle them in with a pre-counted vote so that because we will not have time to audit every single vote in every single state. Now, they have been ordered in most states to take any ballots they receive and set them aside. And they are not to be mixed in with the normal ballots. They're not to get anywhere near the normal ballots. I have heard that there are several places that are flagrantly violating this order.
In Pennsylvania, most prominently among them, that has been unambiguously determined, as far as I'm aware, that Pennsylvania has been contravening a law from the Supreme Court saying that that you need to set aside all of those mail-in ballots separately, and there has already been a declaration that those are to be set aside in preparation for an audit at this point, because it's so evident that there's something strange going on. And I mean, there's a lot of people that are trying to argue, well, I mean, you don't know that there's actually fraud taking place just because they backdated it. You don't know who they voted for, so. But I mean, it's a federal crime, and quite frankly, you aren't going to commit a federal crime unless you know the people involved in committing that felony. Like if you're doing this, it's because you're working with someone who knows who the ballots are for, is having you commit the felony to backdate them all, and then going to be submitted to a guy working at a ballot counting station that you also know who is also in on it.
Yeah.
When you're committing fraud, you just make sure that you have the smallest team possible and you know everybody involved.
Yep. And the other thing is these ballots don't count. These ballots are too late. This is a simple surface level reading of this that we're digging a bit into this one because it's this is actually really interesting to dig into, and we actually have affidavits, so it's hard, we have hard evidence, so we can go in the weeds on this one a bit. But we need to not neglect the surface level, in that these votes are not allowed. Period. It doesn't matter if these people are citizens. It doesn't matter if these people are registered. It doesn't matter if they did everything else on time. These things are postmarked a date too late. You missed your opportunity. Sorry. Too bad. You had every opportunity in the world to mail this in beforehand, but you were too lazy and you procrastinated too long. Sorry.
And nobody is going to commit a felony on your behalf just because they feel bad that you voted late.
Mm-hmm.
That's not going to happen.
So yeah.
And the other thing to keep in mind is that you can now have all of these fake ballots backdated, prepared, and you wheel them into the ballot counting center. Oh, these ballots, they don't actually belong to anybody yet. So what shall we do? Oh, I know. We can just same day register these
Yeah.
because you know the guy who you're dropping them off to.
Yeah. And you probably know the guy at the state, at least some guy at the state registrar's office that can get his way into that chair and convince his coworkers to leave him alone for a bit and just go, yeah, this
Well,
name, this name, this
a
name.
lot of these places do just allow you to roll up, register, and then submit your ballot. In a lot of these states,
Yeah.
you can just do that. So all you need to do is wheel in your stack of ballots, and the guy who's the poll worker in that place running the login book for same day registration, he can just sit there and sign off all those ballots, create a whole bunch of people. Better yet, if you can bring in a bunch of old newspapers with obituaries.
Yeah, them ghosts gonna turn out. Got to turn out too. Got to make sure we represent the dead contingent of the United States. Oh, and by the way, they all changed their political ideology and now vote progressive left, even though that didn't exist before.
I think that's about the smallest of their malfeasances.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, I don't think it is. I think the dead people voting is genuinely the most moral, one of the more morally reprehensible things they've done. It is disgusting to see them treat the legacy of people like my grandparents, who were solid Republicans their whole life, who my granddaddy, who knew what he believed, on a level that we do at least, certainly more than the average lefty or conservative does, and was proud of the fact that he knew why he voted the way he did. Changing his vote into something that is anti-Christian, anti-free speech, anti-consumer, all this stuff that he just would never support is disgraceful to his memory and anybody else's grandparents who are dead, or parents, or siblings, etc., that may be in the same bucket. You cannot assume you're just using them as statistical numbers. But it involves you writing down their name. You're desecrating the memory of somebody doing this. Maybe I'm reaching on that one, but it's how it feels anyway. That's a very feeling-based argument. It just
Well, at any rate, now that we have established this basis for people wheeling in a pile of ballots and then registering them all to a bunch of random people all at one particular time, we can tie this back up to the earlier proportions. And why would we see these earlier proportions? Why do we see, oh, well, the reason they all vote one way is because they were filled out that way. The reason why you see strange bubbles of top of ballot only voting, well, it's because they were all filled out in a hurry, wasn't it? Like, all of those anomalies make sense if you just accept that a whole bunch were prepped together and brought in at once. Because I mean, like, taking let's assume that there's no proportional issue with the number of ballots that have no down ballot voting, they're only voting on the presidency. Presumably there is going to be some proportion of society who just thinks that the presidency is the only thing that matters. It doesn't vote in their local races at all. But why would all of those people, like the vast majority of those people, all just happen to use one type of balloting and they all appear in the count at once?
Yep. And I've seen a lot of people try and play the ever successful censorious conspiracy theorist card when you bring this up, and they act like these things are unrelated when we're not drawing pieces of string together on a chalkboard here, where these things are directly related to one another. They're a cause and effect.
To be fair, conspiracy theorist is probably one of the single most deprecated terms over the past couple years.
Yeah, it's really hit. Ever since they went after Alex Jones, that thing is
Yeah,
that term is almost
like
useless.
racist and fascist and whistleblower, as we mentioned earlier. Like there's been a pretty significant amount of drift on the meaning of some of these terms.
Yeah, it now is just used to describe anybody that has a chain of events that is very logical and makes sense, but we don't like it and it could get us in trouble. That's basically what conspiracy theorist means.
Now, we've burbled on about this for quite a while, but the reality is that we're only just sort of barely scratching the surface of the amount of material you can find out there
Yeah, we
of suspicious behavior, suspicious statistical anomalies, stuff that's just doesn't pass the sniff test.
yeah, and we're giving you a very general overview as well. If we broke this down into individual states and gave you all the examples we could find in those states and took the time to go aggregate them all, it would blow your mind. Like,
Yeah, we would also be doing another extraordinarily long show. I mean, there's so many aspects to this. Like one of the core ones that is being addressed by lawsuits is the simple rejection of got poll watchers.
yeah,
Like why are they not allowed to watch? I thought it was the rules that you had to have an even proportion of Republican and Democrat poll watchers present in
so,
order to audit the ballot counting. But we've had reports that there's some places where there's a 3-to-1 ratio of Democrats to Republicans. We've had places where all of the Republicans were allegedly just ejected and
yeah.
not allowed back in, and the window's blocked up so they can't see inside either.
So yeah, Michigan. I have two of those for you that I can put on the screen. If you give me just a second, I got a few things for this because of course it's Whitmer doing this. So here's our browser cropped. So, Ronna McDaniel, GOP chairwoman, tweets out, "We have documented irregularities in Michigan. In Wayne County, poll watchers were kept in the dark with blocked windows and padlocked doors." And breaking from Paul Sperry, who I don't know, but he says, in Michigan, Governor Whitmer sent Health Department into Detroit TFC Center to evict GOP poll watchers, but not Democrat poll watchers or the media, claiming COVID concerns despite a 40,000 square foot building. Counters cheered when they were evicted. Also put up cardboard over the windows to block the inspection process. So the other thing we need to roll into this is the blocking of the public from seeing what they're doing.
Yeah, well, their claim is that there was a terrifying mob and the ballot counters were frightened, so we blocked them off because they're like animals and they won't be scared by what they can't see.
Don't care how scared you are. Don't care what reason you're giving me. You signed up to do a job, and that job has specific things and ways it needs to operate, and you are not allowed to flagrantly violate them because you're scared of the nice men outside with guns if you plan on cheating.
Yeah, it's also kind of interesting to me, not surprising but interesting, how the people gathered outside the ballot counting centers have been roundly treated by the media as an unruly mob.
Oh, there's a hilarious, I think it was MSNBC that did it, might have been CNN, coverage of one of the ladies is talking like she's in an Iraq war zone with the crowd outside chanting "Stop the steal" and "Fox News sucks." And she's acting like this is an unruly mob of people that's just causing all kinds of problems. Like, I'm pretty sure this lady also has a clip of her standing in the middle of these riots going, "No, it's a mostly peaceful protest."
Yeah, like why are you so worried about them? They're not even at the level of peaceful but fiery yet.
I mean, I would love for them to get fiery in a way that the Antifa-tards didn't, but that's incitement talk right there. That's what that is. So yeah, they would go. So let's rewind a sec. So the poll watchers are evicted. The people that run these election areas, whoever is in charge in that particular area, I forget what their title is, decide in Chicago and in several areas of Michigan that it's just okay to cover the windows with plasterboard or pizza boxes or whatever they have handy so that the public can't see in. Now, so it is illegal to do this in every state, on the state level and on the federal level. The public is allowed to sit there and watch you count the votes. Period. We can do that. That is our constitutional right to make sure you're not pulling the garbage you're pulling right now. So why would you make sure we can't watch what you're doing? Because you're going to be doing something funny. If you were doing everything,
what if that makes the ballot counters feel feelings?
no, too bad. Feelings are a part of life. You use them every day. You feel them every day. You feel ones you don't like every day, and you put your big girl panties on and you deal with it. But they have the view completely blocked. So the Supreme Court says, okay, you can't do that. And in some areas, they had just moved all the ballot counting tables way away from the windows, or rather, they took the boards down, and so people were looking inside for a few hours, and then they just picked up all the tables and moved them to the other side of the building, way across the gymnasium floor or whatever, way out of range of where people could see.
I mean, what do you have to hide? Why would you be so afraid?
Yeah.
You're doing a public thing in a public place.
Yeah, you're doing a service to this country. Nothing about this is a personal action. You are considered a servant while doing so, and all actions undertaken in the name of this election, and those who are working as poll watchers, workers, etc., are doing it in service to the country. None of this is on a private or personal level. It all is public record and needs to be visible. And the public is allowed to call BS if they see you doing something really sketchy. Which you did. You just wouldn't let us see the specifics of it, which makes it even more sketchy. So they are still violating this court order to this day, from what I understand. There's too much stuff going through the courts at the moment about these elections to warrant having the tables moved up to this point. I get that. The fact that they are disobeying this order to begin with is ammunition in and of itself. It's unfortunate.
The Supreme Court seems to be none too amused by this.
Yeah. And I will end us with some memery about the Supreme Court to leave us on a happier note. But yeah, we're getting there. But yeah, it's just I think that covers all the major general surface instances of voter fraud that we're aware of and think are fairly substantial and provable. Things that we can easily present to you who may not be as into politics as we are.
The thing is, if they were at any point actually behaving in a clever fashion, there could be even worse stuff under the surface. This is just all the stuff that they were, bumbling enough to make it obvious that was taking place.
This is what two conservatives with jobs that keep a fairly steady eye on politics managed to see clean through. We did not do super big digs here. We didn't go and find independent sources to verify all this stuff. It was all verified for us. We have video evidence of this stuff. We have many, many accounts, so many from enough trustworthy people that that there's no way to refute some of this stuff.
You see, the thing is that all of these counts, this is all public information.
Yeah.
There's no inside baseball taking place where we've got to have a contact on the inside to obtain the vote numbers or anything. Everything happened in plain view on cable and network television. Everybody in America was able to watch it. Everybody who had access to streaming could watch these results roll in and see things go off the rails in real time.
Yep. And now we move into I think what we'll call the post-election opinion section. Not for us right yet, but I want to cover what everybody has said as groups. I'm largely clumping people together in demographic groups that are not demographics. They're just vague ideas of what they may or may not believe. You may know people that have mixed or split opinions amongst this as individuals, but for the sake of argument, people act as a collective in these things, and their opinions are fairly uniform inside these things I've listed out. So, I'll actually do the one I have on top last because it has announcements in it. So, we'll start with the rank-and-file Democrats. The rank-and-file Democrats have been celebrating with literal parties in the street.
Because, Corona is celebrating with them, so it's not going to infect any of them.
So there's double hypocrisy going on with them celebrating. First, when we have actual evidence, we see it with our eyeballs that there is cheating going on. It's undisputable that something screwy is going on here. Not a peep about but election interference. When they spent how long on Butma
Well,
Russia?
I've heard plenty of peeps of election about election interference, but they're all saying that it's impossible.
Yeah, it's
You can't steal elections. What are you talking about? Elections are always legitimate.
and every single one of those. If you go through their timeline, they're cheering on the Steele dossier and going Butma Russia, Butma Russia. I guarantee it.
Well,
So
sometimes they're going, but my Ukraine. That also happens sometimes.
yeah, but the funnier hypocrisy is if they went Butma Russia, because that was because of the election specifically.
Yeah, because $100,000 worth of Facebook ads is, you know,
That they sold to both parties, by the way.
Yeah, yeah. Both they took out ads on behalf of both parties.
Yeah. So, and the people that bought them, I think were mostly individual interest groups. On top of that, and not the Russian government as a whole. Here we have the entire political apparatus of a political party that has a long-standing history in the United States of America, acting uniformly in their Borg-like collectivist fashion, cheating any way they can possibly think they can get away with, literally everywhere, and are doing it so sloppily you can see it with your eyeballs. We have videos of it, we have affidavits, we have evidence all over the place of this, and they're just like, nah, this ain't election interference. It never happens. Let's go party in the street. And by the way, I got one somewhere around here. I have a snapshot of another tweet. It's not that one. If I can find it, I'll post it. Of what the parties are doing. Because the Democrats are allowed to party for Biden. But if you're Da Jews from Eric Trump, he retweets from Reagan Battalion. Thousands of Joe Biden supporters, including Bill de Blasio and Chuck Schumer, are dancing in the street, squeezed together like sardines 5 miles down the road. From a New York City agent who is handing out COVID fines to struggling Jewish shop owners in Brooklyn.
Well, I guess it's just what you do. It's what you do in New York.
Are you still going to tell me COVID wasn't political? You still going to tell me it wasn't all just a grift? The Democrat Party just saw an opportunity, took some Chinese propaganda, and blew it up into this mega disease that doesn't exist? You still going to tell me that?
It seems to me that people have forgotten at this point all of those videos that came out of people in China who were in the street and they'd start foaming at the mouth and fall over, and it was shilled in the West as cases of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody knows now that that's not what happens if you get COVID. And nobody seems to recall that all of the videos that got people scared to begin with were fake.
They were propaganda videos, folks. Let me tell you how the Chinese operate. You're not allowed to think separate thoughts from what they want you to think, and they wanted their people to be scared, so they made propaganda videos. Because they do this anytime there might be a major contagion going around their country. Any time. They did it during...
Oh, yeah, a lot of those videos are apparently very old. They just got recycled.
Yeah, they did it during swine flu. They did it during bird flu. They did it during SARS. They do this every single time. You idiots. So I hammered that point to quite a few people early on, and they said, no, they're totally legit. I don't think you're talking about the same videos I am, because I saw people in the streets, and it didn't look like it was propaganda. Of course it's not going to look like propaganda. It wouldn't be propaganda if you didn't believe it. And even then, they still look produced.
So, well, I think that the main issue was that they looked funny to me. Like when people fall over like 10 pins, I think it's just funny. It's funny. That's like when I use a paralyzed spell on someone in Skyrim and then push them down a hill.
Yeah.
Like, it's not. It doesn't actually look like somebody coming down with the flu, because I've been sick before. I know what happens when you get a sniffle. It doesn't make me freeze on the spot.
Yeah, the worst you get when you get the sniffles is maybe an oil bump develops on the inside of your nose for a few days and it's really painful. That's about the worst you can hope for. But no, No. We got shut down the world because somebody might get an oil bump on the inside of their nose. It's generally the worst case scenario for COVID at this point for people under the age of 800. I'm being hyperbolic, but you know what I
So
mean.
we're all safe except Joe Biden, and most of Joe Biden's voters are safe.
Well, they can't catch any disease. You see, ghosts are immune to disease unless it's
Maybe
an.
there's like ghost COVID.
Maybe, I guess you could enchant the disease to have an ethereal enchantment on it so that it could deal damage to him. We're getting really nerdy now. We're supposed to be doing politics on this one, but yeah. So yeah, this is your surface overview of what's available right now to be further investigated and where you should focus your efforts on finding fraud at. I think
Yeah,
these are the
because
safest topics to go for.
they these are things that the Trump team is moving. Like they aren't standing still and accepting this. Trump predicted that this would happen explicitly, and he has appointed to the court explicitly those people who are best equipped to litigate this in the legal profession today. And honestly, the Supreme Court is currently very ticked off because they issued orders and those orders were not obeyed. And rumor has it Justice Alito is not a happy chappy at being ignored. So I've got this quote here from the Supreme Court that I'll just read out since this is the current state of things as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. And I quote, all county boards of election are hereby ordered, pending further order of the court, to comply with the following guidance provided by the Secretary of the Commonwealth on October 28 and November 1, namely 1. That all ballots received by mail after 8 p.m. on November the 3rd be segregated and kept in a secure, safe, and sealed container separate from other voted ballots. And number 2, that all such ballots, if counted, be counted separately. Until today, this court was not informed that the guidance issued on October 28, which had an important bearing on the question whether to order special treatment of the ballots in question, had been modified. The application received today also informs the court that neither the applicant nor the secretary has been able to verify that all boards are complying with the secretary's guidance, which it is alleged is not legally binding on them. I am immediately referring this application to the conference and to direct that any response be filed as soon as possible, but in any event no later than 2 p.m. tomorrow, November 7, 2020.
So
So in SCOTUS language, this is basically thumping the table and raging.
yeah, I want to
Like you
also.
can you can hear the sarcasm in which it is alleged is not legally binding on them.
Yeah,
Because this is just referring probably most specifically to Pennsylvania in this case, where they have tried all sorts of shenanigans to avoid having to obey the Supreme Court instructions to separate out the mailed ballots.
yeah. They think that appealing to the court waives the court's mandate that they have to do something. What? They think they can appeal it and they can just they just know they'll win, so they're allowed to ignore the court order that no, people are allowed to watch what you're doing. Like that's hot garbage. So I have provided for your screen an example of two individuals on the Supreme Court who have had to face this particular presidential ticket, like the dudes that are cheating their way in and get accused of rape wrongly with no evidence before. We have at the top my homeboy, Mr. Dark Winter himself, Clarence Thomas. Now, Clarence Thomas, by all accounts that I can tell from his public front-facing persona, is a genuinely good man. He is a one in a million type that you only get a handful every few generations. The other one is Brett Kavanaugh. We all saw what happened to Brett Kavanaugh. It should still be fresh in your memory, if only because the ACB hearings made you think about it again. Kamala was one of the ones going after Kavanaugh, and Biden was practically the lead dude going after Clarence Thomas. And they had nothing on either of these guys, but they accused them of all kinds of dirty stuff.
And to note that we've seen in the case of Clarence Thomas that those accusations, despite a lack of evidence, have followed him around his entire career.
Yes.
He's not going to have forgotten who was responsible for that and what depths those people were willing to sink to.
I truly believe that Clarence Thomas has enough personal character that he will not stoop to a level of taking his petty personal grudge that he may or may not have back at Biden.
I
But
doubt he will need to.
but A, I don't think he'll need to, and B, it would be really funny if he did.
Yeah, I think I would be delighted to see Clarence Thomas write the majority opinion slapping down Biden's claim on the presidency. I think that would be highly, highly amusing. The only tragedy there is that Biden probably doesn't remember who Clarence Thomas is.
Yeah,
Because Biden doesn't remember who Biden is.
he should lead his majority opinion if he gets to write it as, "Hello, Joe. Remember me?" And then he should end it with, "I was the corn pop."
I am fairly confident that he was not corn pop. Fairly confident.
It's I can't. It's got too many bannable words in that 4chan
Yeah,
copy
we
pasta.
can't put that one up. That's too dangerous.
But it is really funny. You can check out our server. I might dump it in somewhere for y'all to find.
Unfortunately, I wouldn't do that if I were you because Discord's pretty paused.
Yeah, they're getting out there. So yeah, I think they're fine. I think Trump's going to be fine, and this is the timeline that I foresee playing out. The most likely timeline. Trump takes all this stuff to court. He has enough evidence to prove several of these instances, if not all of them, that we've laid out, because we only laid out the ones that we think have sufficient ways to be proven in court and have been shown to be unambiguously true to some degree or another, or just flat out admitted to being true in the case of them moving the ballot or moving the ballots back further in the room so the poll watchers can't watch. Like, we have no way they can deny this is happening. We have plenty of these examples and easy ways to show malfeasance and tomfoolery. All you have to do is find any of the people that are involved in this and get them caught on being hyper-partisan and angry at Trump, which is the easiest thing in the world. By the way, find a Democrat's Twitter feed that you know personally that doesn't rage at Trump at least once a week.
Yeah, and anybody who's going to be involved in fraud is definitely going to be in that boat.
Yeah, if they're willing to go this far, they're insane. Because unlike the Republicans, whose crazies generally don't use social media that much, the left is addicted to it. So yeah, I think it's going to be fine. A bunch of people are going to get BTFO'd by this. How it will affect their careers and whether we'll see people in handcuffs or not, I doubt it. But
just because it's going to be fine doesn't mean you should just sit on your duff and wait for it to be fine.
No, we need every voice we can. While there are a lot more of us than some people would expect, there are a lot less of us than there needs to be, and there is never going to be enough. We need as many warm bodies on the streets talking to your friends if that's all you do. Anything, doing anything to be public and call this thing out for what it is.
Yeah, because the whole charade that they're engaged in right now is about creating the narrative. So, and while we wait for the court to do its thing, that narrative needs to be counter-signaled as hard as possible. Because the Ben Shapiro's of this world are not going to help you. They are all perfectly ready to accept a Biden presidency because it puts them back in their career advantageous position.
Yes, this is where you, the conservative, needs to step up and show your stripes as an individual. We on the conservative side have an advantage playing in this field, although it still is not one that makes things any easier for us. We're used to having to play the game as individuals. We don't have a group identity we can latch onto. Being a conservative by its nature in the modern world, you're going to be used to having to find your own way through this mess and make yourself relevant and make what you say have meaning. We don't have talking points to fall back on. We don't have pre-canned narratives. We just have the evidence and how we can personally interpret it. And you need to get whatever you interpret out of this garbage, because there is no reasonable way a human being with two functioning brain cells to rub together can see anything other than they cheated to some degree or another. And you need to tell people. And anybody that's saying, "Oh, we'll just let it go," man, no. Remind them what's at stake. Remind them what will happen if the Biden administration gets in. Tell them the policies they proposed. Talk to them about the Green New Deal again. Talk to them about what they're planning to do to education. Talk to them about what they're planning to do right now on Twitter, if AOC is to be believed. Go around and make a list of all Trump supporters and throw them in the gulags. Do you want any of that? Do you want your kids to have to live through that? Or would you rather them have a fair capitalist environment to play in to try and make the best of themselves? It's up to you. If you're not getting out there and making sure this message gets through, we're not going to be able to keep it penetrated through the culture. And after the election's over, even if Trump wins and gets through the courts just fine, you're not going to have a foothold with anybody on the left because they're all going to have bought into this crazy narrative because not enough people got out and screamed against it.
Yeah, if everything goes Trump's way, you still need to be braced for another 4 years of siege by the culture, siege by the media, siege by all of the people who have bought into the Orange Man Bad narrative, which is an awful lot of people. And
yeah,
you know, don't use your barricades for winter firewood either, because if Trump should happen to be so fortunate as to win the presidency and the Senate and the Congress as a result of votes getting thrown out, which is not impossible, then you may see a second helping of riots.
Yeah, and you guys need to be ready to weather. More importantly, this is a time when we can go on the offense. And the conservatives don't like to go on the offense a lot. We don't get the opportunity a lot. We're normally very defensive players. But this is the time to hit them back. The media is weak. After this election, they'll be at the weakest they probably are going to be for a very long time. Think of how bad they're going to look after this.
Yeah,
Now,
and so they got all the polls wrong. The polling industry is dead now. That's just going to cease to exist. If any rational outcome prevails, there will be no polling industry anymore. And this is the ideal opportunity to counter signal that the story being delivered by the media is not representative of the story in real life. There are tons of big MAGA rallies being organized all across the states right now.
yeah, there are plenty, especially in any of the states mentioned. You'll probably see me at a few of the Georgia ones. I want everybody on the days you can make it, get down there and show up. I don't care if you're just standing in the crowd cheering. Just show up. We need to show that these people do not represent the majority of the country. These cheaters, these progressives, in air quotes, these jackwaffles that just are controlling asswipes, that just want to control your life. That's all they want. They don't give a crap about how good that life is or that they have genuinely better ideas. They don't care. They have not thought about that once. All they care about is having the control to begin with because they feel entitled to it. You cannot let that type of person run your life. And so we need to show we know what's best for us. We had a friend back in VTW who I was jokingly saying something to him one time about how I knew what he really thought about something. And while it was a joke at the time, he responds very flatly and very seriously to me, "I think I know what I want more than you do." Oh, good old Pim. So, and that sticks with me with whenever I'm thinking about these Democrats. Because they think they know what you want, even if they don't have a clue who you are or what you want. And I give you a hint, unless you line up 100% with the progressive agenda, the Democrats are not your team. So get out there and get Trump in that White House again. Get as many senators as you can reelected or elected to run over some Democrats. Get as many House members as we can. We need to take back that House. We've got to get Nancy out. She is a swamp monster that is literally turning into a ghoul.
I think that she's going to snap and go the Biden way before too long. Like,
Yeah,
she seems to be getting more and more unhinged and hysterical. Like she apparently basically threw a fit and stormed out of the last big conference that the upper Democrat party had, and her appearance on that, was it CNN, was not particularly impressive either, with her basically just getting hysterical.
Yeah, flipping out at Wolf Blitzer or whatever it was. Yeah, like, but there are battles to be fought right now, and if you really look around, there are several states right now that have open help needed signs on the ground with the Trump campaign, with your local elections, with the cheating that's going on. If you're in Georgia, if you're in Michigan, if you're in Pennsylvania, they need you right now. If you're elsewhere in the U.S., we need you helping us by digging up fraud. You may not have to get off your butts in your areas if you're in somewhere like Florida that seems to have been run legit, but any type of evidence you can find that you can vet, or if you have expertise in analyzing data and can analyze it in a way that the Trump team can read and if you're if you're just an aggregator that can put stuff together and you're really good at organizing data, send that to the people that can send it to their Georgia senators, their state senators, that is.
Crash your representatives' mail servers with with evidence.
I have sent mine. I've emailed both state representatives in the Senate at the federal level. I sent it to Purdue and to Loeffler. I sent it to my local House member. I forget his name. And I sent it to the entirety of the Georgia State Senate. Like, literally every single one of them. And their underlings, if I could find their email address. Like, you guys have got to get out there and do this. This is the time to finally start hitting back. And unless you want to be hitting back with guns because we let them cheat and we didn't do enough, you need to act now. The time for waiting's over. If you weren't doing your push-ups and sit-ups in the months leading up to this, sorry, too late. We need to get out there on the ground and do stuff. Playtime's over. Speculation time's over. It's action time now. So chop chop. Stop cucking out. Stop telling me all these reasons you just want to get back to normal life. Stop telling me, oh, but my children, oh, but my income. No. None of that matters. Not a lick of that matters. Because if they win, all of that gets flushed down the tube. Including your kids, probably. Certainly any future kids you might have. But definitely your current ones are on the table, too. So yeah. It's time to act, folks. I'll see you on the streets. You got anything else?
No, I mean, because we could really go on ad nauseum, because there's so many things that suggest there's something just outright wrong here.
Yeah.
But what I hope, and I hope quite reasonably, is that this is just going to be another President Gore situation.
Yeah, I do too. But a lot of that is going to depend on the ground game we have right now. Like, a lot of that relies on you folks, those of you that are listening in the United States, and getting out and talking to people. The public, real-world narrative needs to change in our favor, or at least needs to be given a bulwark to weather the incoming media storm. This is important work. Even if you can't see your individual contribution, this is something that only you, the individual, can do. You have somebody you know that nobody else does that you can talk to. You have somewhere you can go. You have administrative access that nobody else can. Your individual talents are useful here. It doesn't matter if you're a janitor at some school. That lets you in any building in that school, dude. All kinds of people you can strike up a conversation with while you're emptying the trash can. So, figure it out. Be creative. Be smart about it. Look at what you got for skills. Look at what you got access to. Look at what's feasible for your life. And do absolutely everything you can. Make sure they don't have any kind of media narrative foothold to get their grubby claws into. So that's all I got to really hammer on. I know I've hammered on the it's time to move part a lot here, but it's time to do it. And a lot of people aren't doing it. If you find anybody not doing it and you are on the same page me and Vol are, light a fire under their chair, literally if you have to. Burn that chair. Get them off their butt. Playtime's over. So yeah, I think I'll sign us off there unless you got anything to close us with.
No, just you don't have to look hard to find the stuff. Like, just go on social media, go on YouTube. It's easier to find this stuff on Parler than it is on Twitter because it's not being suppressed as hard. And a lot of the people who've been booted off Twitter, like Milo and so forth, are still allowed to post on Parler. So it's very easy to find this information, but you can't find it from any of the big dogs. Nobody is talking about it if they've got, their own custom websites.
Yep, this is a grassroots information gathering campaign for Scherzies. Also, in that vein, the Donald.win has a rolling team of mods. The mod team there is amazing. They have been posting stuff in their stickies change like hourly if you sort by hot topics thread, hot topics and threads, and it will have a new set of stickies literally almost every time you refresh the page, unless you're sitting there mashing F5. And these things often contain aggregates of evidence you can use, or people you can email, your local county representatives, etc. They're very good at this stuff, and they've been on the ball with a rotating team of great mods nonstop. So the Donald.win's a place you can go. And if you really are so inclined, the internet hives of scum and villainy are always available. The Kiwi Farms and 4chan are pretty good go-tos if you really want the raw autistic spurgery, if you're willing to sift through that.
Yeah, it's not just autistic spurgery, it's also shills by the dozen.
Yeah, they've both been infected pretty bad right now. From I usually use the farms more than 4chan, but I hear 4chan is just as bad. With the shills have come out of the woodwork. So yeah.
Yep. Hopefully they will all be in tears before too long.
Yep. See you at the salt mines, folks. Let's make sure that we wind up there. See you next time.